everyone, and welcome to an on-the-road episode of Talking Acquisition. This is the weekly high-energy, informative, and slightly opinionated view on all things acquisition, procurement, and government contracting related. This is the place where the contracting and acquisition communities and our industry partners connect, talk, listen, and learn from each other. My name is William Randolph, and I am your host, and I'd like to introduce my co-host, my colleague, my partner, and my dear friend, Soraya Carrera. Hello, Soraya. How you doing?
I am doing fine, Will, and excited to have this opportunity to take our show on the road.
Yes, this is fun. This is fun.
That's right. So let's start with the podcast disclaimer, because we wouldn't be right if we didn't do that. Our podcast shares information and views on a variety of topics that impact the federal acquisition community. Our goal is to provide thought leadership and perspective, not to criticize, judge, or render political opinions, although a few of those do slip out on occasion. We provide this free service because we are former federal acquisition professionals and leaders. We believe that the creativity, innovation, and effectiveness of our community is unleashed when we share knowledge, information, and learning. We hope you enjoy our podcast, and we welcome the views and comments of our colleagues across the private and public sectors. So, Will, how about you introduce our topic for the day?
Awesome. So on the theme, we're here with NCMA Space Coast, and on the theme, it's been an educational theme. We're talking a little bit about the subway, the DAU subway map, kind of on theme, and talking about some stuff in the training and development space. But one of the things I want to talk about, and what we'd like to talk about, is acquisition strategy design. Okay, when you think about the building blocks, the things that are necessary in our business, when you get the demand signal, there's a mission need, and they're starting the process of doing acquisition design from a strategy perspective. That's what we want to talk about today. What do you think about that?
One of my favorite topics. It's
all right.
In the plan, man.
It's all in the plan. That's right. That's right. So you want to start off, or shall I?
Sure. Happy to start off, because plan's a four-letter word. Let's talk. All right. So when we talk about acquisition strategy development, a lot of people immediately jump to the acquisition plan. I don't. Acquisition plan is a document. I want to talk about the activity, the strategizing, how you pull things together. So the first thing I think about is, who's my acquisition team? Who's going to be on that acquisition team? It's more than a contracting officer, a program manager, and a lawyer. You're going to need people from your Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization. You need to hear from your small business specialist. You're probably going to need someone from IT, like your chief technology officer, your CIO, or somebody in that sphere, because pretty much everything we buy these days has some level of technology. You're probably going to need the person that's going to be the COR on the procurement, because they can help you with valuable lessons learned and other things. And you're probably going to need some folks from security, because you're probably going to have some security issues, be they cybersecurity or even personnel security. Right. And of course, logistics, possibly finance, because of your financing mechanisms. So putting that team together is probably the first and most critical step. One of the groups that I try to include in that team, if I know them, are the folks that are going to lead the evaluation teams. Oh, yeah. And that's a little bit different, but it's extremely important, because they're going to make or break your acquisition if you think about it. They really need to understand not just the requirement and your strategy. They're going to need to understand how they need to evaluate this procurement and what's going to be expected of them. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I love it. I love it. You know, I always use this phrase of get everybody on the van as early as possible. You know, we've got.
I say that differently. I say that differently, man. I say get everybody on the train, but not they're under it.
Okay. I think same concept. We're about to take a journey, and it always costs more if we pick up people along the way that they didn't start. They didn't start the journey. Okay. It always costs more. So whenever we get anybody on late, they've got an idea, they've got an opinion, they've got something that we didn't think about earlier. So my desire has always been, when you think about the team from an acquisition strategy perspective, is get the team together and get them on the van. Now, somebody may be driving, somebody may be riding shotgun. It could be people back there not paying attention, but at least they're on the van. They're listening, they're hearing the work happening. So if something pops up, it's like, hey, maybe you should take a left there instead of a right.
Exactly.
You hear it as soon as possible. So yeah, I'm a big fan of that. I think that there are two other pieces that I like to add to the team when we think about acquisition strategy design, and that is knowledge and time.
Yep.
Understanding those two. I think those are the two other, along with team, the three components that have the strongest corollary to successful strategy is the team, and then understanding your knowledge, meaning of your requirements, of the market, of the marketplace, having not only market intelligence, market knowledge, market research, but also market intelligence. How does the environment affect our buying? And then the time. I think hopefully you will attest to time, our greatest friend, our worst enemy, all wrapped into one. When we have it, oh, we can do amazing things if we have time. If we don't have time, you just break out your cookie cutter and you just slam out what you've always done because you don't have time. So I think that holy trinity of team, the team that's making things happen, the time that you have to actually execute it, and then all the ability to increase your knowledge about not only the requirements, but the market environment in which the solution may live.
I'm with you. So let's talk a little bit about knowledge, because this is where I think sometimes our biggest weaknesses are. And I always like to start with the requirement, what we know and understand about that requirement. What are you buying? When do you need it? Who's going to be the end user? How will the end user use whatever it is that you're buying? And where is this product or service to be delivered? And how will you know who's the right company or what's the right product or service that you're going to buy? And that last question, you know what that goes to, right? That starts to go to your eval criteria. How will you know? How are you going to judge that, right? Defining the requirement is always the hardest thing. And here's a little secret that I love to remind people. In the government, we're not the only ones that have difficulty defining a requirement. Industry has the same issue. Really, anybody who tells you, oh, I know how to define a requirement perfectly, toss them out the door. It's not easy. It is not easy.
It's not easy.
You have to think about the problem. What's the problem you're trying to solve, or what's the item that you're trying to fix, or what is it? And it requires a series of questions and discussions. And this is where I start to deviate from a lot of folks. I say, as soon as you start talking about that requirement, let's go have a conversation with industry. Let's go find out how industry hears our requirement. You notice that I'm talking about all this and I haven't written a single thing on a piece of paper.
That's right.
I have not started an act plan, because to me, that's the last thing you do, because you want to have all the answers when you write the act plan. So that way it'll fly right through, right? So go talk to industry, start that engagement with industry. Start even before you start your formal market research, so that they know I'm coming at you. I'm going to be coming at you with an RFI, source of solid, whatever it is I'm going to come at you with to get some info. And here's my high level timeline. And here's what I'm trying to understand. I want to understand this product. I want to understand the service, how you sell it, how you price it. The more you can learn from industry, the better off you're going to be, because then that solicitation is going to make sense to them. But here's the other thing that I always tell folks. The more you share with industry, the quicker they are to self-select themselves out. If they can't bid it, if they are not going to be able to win it, if they don't really think they're the right company, they'll take themselves out early because they don't want to spend any money on this thing. And along the way, they might even give you some suggestions. So I'm a big fan of engage with industry the moment you start thinking about that requirement and what kind of information you need, so that you can quickly move into your market research phase and then start doing the formal homework of putting together your market research report and determining if it's small, if it's large, what have you. And you know that I have a few comments when we start talking about the actual acquisition plan itself, right?
Absolutely.
So, but I'm gonna turn it over to you if you want to talk a little bit about market research, because I know you're a little passionate about that.
Yeah, I am. I'm a big fan. I have this idea. I have this symbolism that I use, that requirements, when they materialize from a mission demand signal, something happens, the agency, the organization, the department says we're going to do X, and then immediately there's like, oh, but we need Y. So as soon as you do that, that first look at the requirements, in my opinion, my symbolism for it is Swiss cheese. It's just chock full of holes. Okay, it's a thing. It's a thing already, but it has holes. And so the market research process is really designed to fill the holes in the Swiss cheese. How informed can we be about the requirements, what the ask is, so we can get the ask right? Because that's really the government's responsibility, is to get the most perfect ask, okay? So the information allows us to, one, have an understanding of really what the demand signal is and what the need is, but then to mature the requirements to such a degree that they can be effectively communicated to industry. So I think that market research piece is huge. And I make a big distinction between market research and market intelligence.
Correct.
From a standpoint of market research, it's like the salient characteristics. How much is it? What color is it? How many do you sell? In what boxes? In what lots do they come? What's the price? All the typical stuff.
Who are you?
Yes.
Who are you?
Yes.
Are you a supplier?
Socioeconomics.
Seller? Exactly.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Exactly.
So that market research piece is almost the most elementary piece of the equation, in my opinion. That second piece is that market intelligence. Is like, okay, how do we go into the marketplace and ask for it? How is it sold? Is there seasonality? Maybe there's a time of the month that's better to ask for it than not. Are there some socioeconomic characteristics that are at play? Are there some economic characteristics? Maybe it's influenced by the price of oil or something. You just never know. And if you don't do right, exactly. So if you don't do that market intelligence, going to that next level of going to industry, going in a tent and living with them for a while and say, okay, tell me how this thing is done, I think we miss out, and it decreases the opportunity for us to maximize the buying experience if we don't lean into that market intelligence piece.
No, I 100% agree. The other comment that I would make here, another opportunity to engage with industry, because they sometimes can't answer all your questions, or sometimes you need to know a little bit more. And this is a great opportunity to talk to them again. And look, I'm not saying you're going to do this on every acquisition, but on a lot of these major acquisition programs, you want to be engaging with industry at every step of the way.
Absolutely.
And the more you talk to industry before that solicitation goes out, the more information you're going to get. Because as a lot of my great colleagues in industry tell me, I'm willing to talk as much as you want to talk till that solicitation comes out. After that, I'm not giving away the secret sauce, right? So again, engage with industry. Thank them for responding to your RFI. I think it's extremely important that we don't let industry think their information fell into a black hole.
Oh.
I used to hear that comment all the time. I responded to your RFI 6 months later.
Nothing.
I haven't heard from you.
Yeah.
All they want to hear is thank you, we got your responses, and the next time you hear from us is when we do X or in this time frame. They don't even want the exact date and time. They just want to know what's the time frame. Because here's the deal. Just as we have a stack of acquisitions we're working on, so do they.
They have a stack.
They are pursuing multiple opportunities, and they want to be responsive to you. So what they're trying to do is plan and juggle and make sure the right teams are available to talk to you. I think that's an extremely important part. I don't want to see industry waste money, because at the end of the day, that money gets charged back to us. It goes into overheads, it goes into the G&A expenses or whatever. So you end up paying for it. So the more efficient we can be with them, the more efficient they can be with us. The more precise we are with them about the opportunity and when to talk to us, the more precise they're going to be back with us on information. So now we get to the acquisition planning stage, right? I'm like moving us along. So anyway, so we're going to get this market research thing done, because that's like really, that's fun stuff, by the way.
It's fun. It is.
Right? So now we're going to go to acquisition planning. So we're going to pull our team together. We're going to share the market research information. We're going to come up with our strategy. So let's talk about acquisition planning, because this is like my favorite part. But notice I said planning, not plan.
Not the artifact. Right.
Because plan is a piece of paper. I want the action. I want the activity. I'm an action person. I hired people to write that stuff for me because I don't like writing. Anyway, no, I love to write, but I prefer to take the activity. So now we're going to pull our team together with all the information we have. And here are a couple of things. You know, you and I like to do nuggets at the end of the show. Since we're doing this show a little different, I'm going to give you my nuggets right now.
All right.
Talk about acquisition strategy and plan. Can we please remember that there is an entire federal acquisition regulation part called Part 16, and there are multiple types of contracts in there.
Yeah.
Everything doesn't have to be an IDIQ or a TNM. Please, let's pick the right contract type for what we need and what we're buying. Match it to the requirement and what you really think you need. If you write the wrong contract for the right thing, it's still the wrong contract.
Yeah.
See what I'm getting at? Because you're probably not going to pay the right price. You might not get it delivered on time, and you might not have the right terms and conditions.
Yeah, I love that.
Our Part 16 is your friend. And it is part of your planning and strategy development to think about your contract type. And along with that is FAR Part 15, right? That's negotiated procurement. Woohoo, yay. I love to negotiate too. But there is a FAR Part 12 for commercial item buys. And if you go down FAR Part 12 route, let's not please introduce FAR Part 15.
You took my nugget. You took my nugget.
I'm sorry, you messed me up, man. The lawyers go ballistic on that.
Oh, well, I know.
You use FAR Part 15. Agreed. Now you're in FAR Part 15. No, Part 12 is reserved for commercial item buys. Part 15 is for those negotiated procurements where you're probably building something or at least modifying something commercial. It gives you great flexibility. Use it wisely and take advantage of the innovations. You know, I spent a lot of years reading a lot of proposals, okay? And I will tell you, that was boring stuff. I prefer to meet with the vendor and hear about their solution.
Sure.
I prefer to see demonstrations. So the periodic table of acquisitions, I think they're talking about this, the periodic table of acquisition innovation, which is up on the FAI website, is a phenomenal tool. And it is based on a lot of the work that we did in the Procurement Innovation Lab at DHS and across the federal government, other agencies, doing things like voluntary down selects, technical challenges, confidence ratings, oral presentations. These are great ways for the program officials to get excited and energized about evaluating proposals, and more importantly, for us to really pick the right companies. So I encourage that use of FAR Part 15. Again, extremely important that strategy match that requirement and that mission outcome that you wish to achieve. But please remember, Part 15 is your friend. It is not the same as Part 12. Use Part 12 the right way. And please, let's use some of those innovations that are out there. And I'm going to let you take the next piece.
Oh, you took my nugget. You took my nugget. Okay, so, but I agree. I have this saying. It's like pick a lane and stay in it. Meaning 8, 12, 15. Pick one. Is like pick one and then stay in there, because it's the amalgam of the strategies. That's what gets you in trouble. But
by the way, I'm glad you said that. I want to just throw in something. That's what gets us in a lot of protest situations when we try to fix those.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So I want to talk about the art of the possible. Thinking about what the art of the possible is. And I think it's tangential to your comment about innovation. I think under your leadership at DHS, and I have had an opportunity to bounce around and see a lot of organizations now in the current work that I do. I think DHS is leading in the innovative procurement area, not just innovations from a technology perspective, but from a reimagining procurement and procurement strategies. I think DHS is doing an amazing job there. And one of the things that I'd like to get your opinion on is the idea of what's in the art of the possible. I believe that the art of the possible is often defined by the confidence of the contracting officer and the contract specialist.
I would agree with that.
The exposure that a given team has has a strong corollary. It may not define it, but I think it has a strong corollary to what strategies, tactics, and techniques are in the art of the possible. So I think my nugget here is get as much exposure as possible, collect as many tools to put in your tool bag as possible, because you never know the thing that's going to come around, the requirement that's going to come around the corner, that you're going to need something that's not the traditional, GSA schedule Federal Supply Schedule buy or something.
Right.
Something unique that's going to come around the corner. And when we take square pegs and try to shove them into round holes, that's another another area where I think we are, where the target opportunity goes high for protest opportunity. It's like, we're doing weird things. We're trying to take something that you may have a solid strategy designed for, and trying to shove it into something just because we have past experience, or our comfort levels or our confidence levels are high. So for my community, I'm not going to say for the acquisition framework, for my community, I encourage people to think about getting much exposure as possible across all of the areas, because you never know the thing that's going to come around the corner that's going to need some creativity.
So, and let's talk about exposure, because exposure doesn't have to be that you've done it yourself. Exposure could be that you know someone that's done it, you can confer with, get input, take a look at what they did. You don't have to do it exactly the same way. In fact, that was one of our tenets in the Procurement Innovation Lab. It was that this team will do this thing. They'll go out and teach you in a webinar what they did. You go perfect on it. You go make it better. You go adapt it to your environment and tell us what you did. And that's how you proliferate the learning. But I want to add another element that is extremely important. I agree with you. The confidence of that contracting officer is what's going to bring out their creativity. But it is also the leadership that they have. That willingness of leadership to tolerate risk and to accept that there is a probability that something could go wrong.
Yeah.
Right. And, in this business, what I like to remind people is that when things go wrong, we probably know how to fix them. So let's not fear going wrong or something failing. Let's invite creativity and innovation, and let's make sure we're managing the risk, that we're taking the right level of risk based on the requirement we're trying to fulfill. I always thought about, when at DHS, what I used to tell folks, the mission that we serve deserves that we take some level of risk to achieve that mission. Absolutely. This is about the security of our country. And so I think we need to think about that, and we need to talk about that a little bit more. Folks need to understand that mission, the level of risk, but the leaders have to be willing to take risks. If you're not championing your people, if you're not encouraging that creativity, and if you're not willing to take the hit when something goes wrong, get out. Get out.
I love it.
Okay.
I love it.
I mean, from someone who has her head attached still to her neck, I stood up and I took it. And there were criticisms. Some people thought I was crazy. What else is new, right? I said, that's fine, but I'm standing with my folks. I stood and I took it for them, and I gave them awards because they were willing to try something new. And here's the deal that they learned. And this was something I knew. There's no secret here. The FAR is not as inflexible as everybody tries to make it out to be. People interpret it inflexible.
Absolutely. It's not a recipe book.
Exactly. It's not a cookbook, for Christ's sake. It just is a document that tries to categorize all the rules and stuff. And if you can work within those four corners, you can achieve a lot of things. But you got to be creative. You got to be willing to interpret, and you got to be willing to engage in a discussion, an argument, if you will. I'll say that word. With your legal counsel. But here's the deal. They're trying to protect you. And so what you guys have to do is understand what the risks are and what are the risks that you have to mitigate. And here again, engage with industry. As soon as you draft up that plan, or let me say it properly, as soon as you get your plan approved, but as soon as you get your plan approved, you should be going out to industry and talking about your strategy, your approach. If you can give them a draft of C, L, M, and even B, your pricing, I'm probably dating myself with these subparts. Anyway, but if you can lay out that strategy, what you need, how you're going to evaluate it, and how you think you're going to price it, industry welcomes that information, and they will give you feedback, and they will give you good feedback. Okay, because all they want to do is be prepared to be responsive to you. So again, engage with industry. You're always going to hear me say engage with industry. The more you engage with them, the better off you're going to be. Oh, and by the way, the more you engage with industry, just for those who might not realize this, it's easier when that solicitation comes out to keep to the time limit that you want to set for proposal prep. The other thing that's good about engaging with industry along the way is that it makes it a little harder for them to say, I didn't know. And that to me is a key feature and another element that protests are typically based on.
Yeah,
right.
absolutely. I'm gonna take the other side of that coin with the industry engagement for a minute.
Sure.
I wholeheartedly believe it is government's responsibility to engage with industry. I'm going to go now to the industry side. It says industry, it is absolutely your responsibility to offer engagement to the government. Okay, regardless if the culture of the team around the buy that you are, or around the item, around the goods and services, around the requirement or the solicitation is a forward-leaning communicative team, that's not important. Okay. It was not as important as industry taking the responsibility, owning it, and saying, let us offer to communicate with you. Now, I don't say give away the secret sauce.
Hang on, but I want to throw out one of your favorite isms.
Okay.
Don't give the government homework.
Right. Yes, that's right. You're right. Don't give homework, but please encourage, offer. If people want, offer a one-on-one, offer a demonstration. That's what I'm talking about. Those strategies and tactics, you may run up against a team that has not been exposed to that, okay? Or not have the comfort in that space. But I would at least offer, we welcome to come in and talk to you more. We got the secret sauce. You told us in the RFI, don't give anything proprietary, but we want you to know we got it. We got it. So if you want to come talk to us, we welcome the opportunity to come talk. And I
keep
think,
it brief and spiffy.
Yes, that's exactly where I was going, Soraya, is that one of the things that the pandemic has given us is the Zoom call, okay? 20 minutes, okay? Getting 20 minutes on somebody's schedule, that's not hard. That's not hard. Okay, so it should be at least offering. Now, whether it's received or not, that's out of industry's control. But the offer, no communique should go, in my opinion, and this is what I coach all the time, no communique should go to the government without offering, let's sit down and talk for 20 minutes. Okay, and if they hear that 3 or 4 times, maybe someone will say, oh, maybe we should sit down and talk for 20 minutes. Okay. So I think that's a valuable proposition.
No, I think that's fantastic. And I had to throw in, they'll give government homework, because I always love that line from you. You know, don't go in there and tell the government what to do, or what do you do for me?
What you got?
You go in and tell the government what you're going to do for them, right?
Yes, exactly.
So I was looking at the chat comments and I thought, I like the leadership BAM, but someone was asking about the CPAR's AI initiative. You're familiar with that, Will. We talked about it at World Congress. The Procurement Innovation Lab at DHS undertook this project to invite industry in. I think they started out with like 9 companies. I think it's down to 4, to develop a tool using AI and other technologies to extract data from CPARs. And one of the reasons this question is being asked is because you could use CPARs data for market research. So to answer the question, I'm not sure as to the status. When I departed DHS, we were really down to addressing some policy issues that were out there about the data, about the exposure of the data to industry, to commercial companies, to be able to use the AI, because the AI doesn't work if you don't have the data. So I'm not sure where that is, but I'm sure that if you reach out to Polly Hall, who's a senior advisor over at the DHS Office of the Chief Procurement Officer, or to the Procurement Innovation Lab, they can probably give you a status update, because I'm sure they're still working it. We were really excited about this, and that concept of potentially using CPAR's data as part of your market research, because it's historical information, right?
Yeah.
Now you know who's out there, who's doing it, and how well they've done it.
Absolutely. Good stuff.
So thank you for that question. So go ahead, Will. I'm sorry, I had to interject that because
all good. I see questions coming up. So at this point, let's just shift. I'm going to follow your lead. Let's shift to the Q&A time. So we would encourage.
I tell you about following my lead, man, I'll beat you in trouble every time.
I'd follow you anywhere, Soraya. Okay. So if anyone has questions, please follow your colleagues and throw them in the chat. I'm going to go back to the first one at the top, Soraya. Someone asked a question. Some of your favorite websites, tools, and resources to gather market research. Here's mine. Again, I go back to the pandemic. The pandemic took it away, but the pandemic also gave it. Okay. And one of the things that the pandemic gave it is that people started congregating and aggregating themselves online. Okay. Find where your community, the people that consume or provide the goods and services that you are interested in, or that you're interested in consuming or bringing to the government. Something as easy as LinkedIn. It has hundreds of groups tailored around various aspects of business. Go find those groups and live amongst them. Okay.
Yes.
So my strategy is find their tent, go in the tent and live amongst them. Open your ears and open your eyes, and they will tell you exactly what ails them, what their wants, pains, and aspirations are, and
Right.
then start listening. And then they will also have resources for research for the market, understanding the market. So my first go-to is go find your tribe. Okay, find the people go find the people that consume your content. Okay, from a ideas, from a goods and services, from a delivery perspective, from a business perspective. Go find where they live. They live somewhere online now because the expos and all that stuff was shut down for 2 years. They reconstituted themselves online. The work is to go find them and then go live amongst them and just listen.
Yeah. Well, and some of the other tools that you have available to you, can't deny GSA does a really good job of aggregating data and putting it online, whether it's about best-in-class vehicles, the GSA supply schedules, or other resources. So go explore the GSA website, because there is a lot of data out there, quite a bit, and they continue to add data. The other comment that I would make is the agencies that specialize in what you're buying. So let's use the pandemic when we were looking for personal protective equipment. Agencies that you wanted to go look at were VA, you wanted to go look at DLA, you want to go look at HHS, because these are the organizations that are in that business. And in fact, one of the comments that I've made that I often talk about when I'm at events is the cross collaboration across agencies in the federal government could not have been better. I mean, it is amazing how much better we've gotten at that. Are we perfect? Is somebody out there going to criticize us? Of course they are, because that's what they do. My point is this: during the pandemic, when I put together our team, because what we did was came together as an organization, all the heads of contracting with the Office of Chief Procurement Officer, so we could figure out what was available, who was going to buy what, how we were going to share it, instead of everybody going out and doing the same damn thing. We started joining forces with other agencies, because we were being able to connect with other agencies and find out what they were doing, or where they were going, or where they were finding resources, or sometimes even saying, you've got it, can I buy it off of you so that I can use it over here while you go out and buy more? And by the way, I'll help fund your contract. The mechanisms that you can come up with to share information, and these days with everybody being online, everybody having web pages, it's so much easier to connect with folks. So I strongly recommend you think about the agencies that really buy it and reach out to them, look at their websites. You're going to find that there's a wealth of information out there. And the advent of best-in-class strategic sourcing and that kind of stuff actually helps. And then the other thing I was going to say, industry associations, another plug. It's like GSA. Industry associations, very good about sharing information. If you reach out to them and you talk to the industry associations, they will point you in the right direction. So you have a lot of mechanisms for doing market research, and industry associations are also a great way to engage with industry. When you're ready to announce a solicitation or a planned solicitation, it's a great way to do it as industry associations, whether you're talking to ACT-IAC, Professional Services Council, Homeland Security Defense Business Council. I mean, I can name them. I've worked with them over the years so much, and I think they do a great job. And of course, NCMA. Let's not leave NCMA out of the equation.
Absolutely, good stuff. So I'm going to add another one. Okay, so this one is really high tech. So just follow it. To take me a moment. Follow.
I know which one you're going. Go ahead.
SAM.gov has this website. It's called SAM.gov. Okay. And surprisingly, on SAM.gov, it has this interesting bar called keyword search. It's an amazing thing. Okay. So just imagine, just follow along with me. Imagine just putting some keywords into the keyword search, into the platform where all government, outside of national security interests, have to post their requirements, and hitting enter. Guess what happens? Anyone that's done anything similar to what you've done, bing, they just show up for years. Literally, it goes back years. Okay, now here's the real kicker. Here's where the technology comes in. Inside those listings, there's an email and telephone number for the identified contracting officer. Okay, think about that now. Wow, what high tech capability that is. There's a person, an email, and a telephone number required to have to be listed. Imagine just reaching out to someone that's done something similar to what you've done the last 6 months ago, 7 months ago, 8 months ago. Imagine the intelligence that you could get from your brothers and sisters inside of government that can tell you where the mud holes are, that says, if I had to do it all over again, here's the magic question. If I had to do it all over again, what would I do the same? What would I do different? And I just believe that is a fairly untapped resource for just going in and asking our brothers and sisters in government in the acquisition space, hey, how'd it go for you? You know, and if you had to do it all over again, what would you do different?
Well, and there are a lot of companies, and because I've talked to them through the years, and I've met several companies that, in response to state and local government, have developed websites and have developed tools where they're more like review tools, where you can review a company with minimal information, but at least who's out there in the industry. Yeah. There's an organization at NIH that I can't think of. I think it's in Commerce. That I can't remember their name off the top of my head, but it's a manufacturing organization. It's actually a group that has regional offices, and they know the manufacturers in the local area. And during the pandemic, you could go to them and say, hey, company XYZ is saying they are now converting to doing hand sanitizer. They could tell you if it was realistic. And if that company could really do it, if it had the resources. Yeah,
if they were doing dog food last week and now they're doing.
Exactly.
Yeah, got it.
The folks that were doing liquor were really good at it. But my point is, there is a wealth of resources. And as much as we joke around about Googling, you'd be surprised what you learn when you go in there, enter some keywords and start searching. But there are a lot of companies out there that are understanding, that really are getting the plight of the contracting officer, trying to do market research quickly in this environment and getting too much information. And so there are a lot of companies that are looking at AI, RPA, and other tools to identify or to develop resources for the contracting officer to enable them to get these searches done as quickly as possible and put the right kinds of parameters in that enable them to get the answer they seek, and not just a hodgepodge of information that they have to sort through. Yeah. Because, by the way, and I will tell you, the companies that have approached me to advise them on this area, now that I'm in the private side, what I keep reminding them is of this one simple rule. You got to keep it simple for the CEO. The CEO keeps getting responsibility added onto them. Every time that Congress passes the budget, NDAA, or they pass a new regulation, there's some responsibility being
something else to do.
Exactly. And so we can't ask them to go and look for the data themselves, then read it and figure out whether it's the right stuff. We got to get information in their hands so that it's quick and easy for them to do their analytics and determine, do I have what I need? Or do I need to go look for something further? So the more that we can develop these kinds of tools that enable them to focus and hone in on what they're trying to find. Do I want new companies? Do I want small companies? Do I want women-owned companies? Do I want underrepresented companies in Kansas City? Yeah, sure. That out there. I don't know if it's Kansas City. But my point is, the more that we can build tools that enable the CEO to get through this process quickly, so that they can focus on the job that they have to do, which is to buy the right thing at the right time from the right people for the mission that they serve.
I love it. I love it. You mentioned something earlier, and so I have a question for you. But for the audience, please, I encourage you to put questions in the chat.
Surround here. You can't get in a word.
Can't get in a word edgewise. I know. But I have a question for you. You mentioned cross collaboration during the pandemic, during the first few months of the pandemic, when PPE was all the thing. Why do you think it takes a pandemic, or it takes a burning platform, for the organizations to be encouraged to do this level of cross collaboration? I hope it's getting better. Just every day it's just getting better. But it is my sense, and I have no empirical evidence, just anecdotal, that it often takes the burning platform, some catastrophic event for everybody to say, hey, there are people over there and over there and over there that may be doing the same thing. Why don't we sit down and have a conversation and talk to each other? Is there something there about an emergency, or about a kind of again, I'll use the burning platform, something that's driving it? Why can't we replicate? Why can't we tap into that and replicate that on a daily basis?
So yes, there's something about an emergency where you start to get really smart and say, how in the heck do I get this done as quickly, as effectively, and efficiently as possible? And especially when there are people's lives at stake. It just becomes that more essential, and you become that much more, I don't know if that's good English, that it makes you more creative, more willing to stretch. The reality is, and I say this all the time, it's about leadership in an organization. It's about leadership reminding people we can do this. Right. Think about the organizations, and I know some of you out there are in these organizations where you're stovepiped, where you actually like work within your organization, if it's procurement or finance or whatever, but you sit in that organization and you don't always reach out to your counterparts. One of the things that I tried to do as a leader at DHS, and that I have always encouraged folks in our position, whether it was the HCA, the Senior Procurement Executive, or the CXO of the agency, the Chief Procurement Officer, the Chief Information Officer, we got to talk to one another. We got to reach to one another. Whenever a situation hits our desk, you notice that when I talked about the acquisition team, I had IT in there. I had security. Sometimes I even had HR in there, because there are elements of that procurement that impact them, or at least that they can advise on, that they can help you on. And when we try to do everything ourselves, we're probably not going to get it right. Can't tell you how many contracts in contract administration where we started to run into trouble, and we would call in our CIO, or we called in our chief security, or whoever it was that needed to help us solve the problem. And it turns out that if we'd had them from the beginning, right, that's the first thing. They might have had the right language in the contract to address that particular issue in the first place. Yeah. So one of the things that I did as Chief Procurement Officer at DHS is I took that role of leadership very seriously. When you think about what a leader does, a leader is not there to tell the organization what to do. They already know what to do. I don't need to hear that from them. They're there to champion the team, provide them the resources that they need, and give them the guidance. Notice I said guidance, not direction, guidance to get to that mission objective, to get to that mountain that you're going to charge. Sometimes you have to get directive, sometimes in an emergency, but part of that guidance is let's reach across. And people will do what their leadership does. They emulate leadership. Absolutely. And so when I was reaching across, talking to my CIO, talking to my chief security officer, et cetera, staff were figuring that out. I'm already having conversations with them. And when they would come and brief me on something, I go, have you talked to security? They have a guy over there that does blah, 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 blah. Now they start reaching out. And that's what we've got to encourage, because the safety is in numbers. This government, we try to play by the rules. And I say this all the time. We play by the rules. Our enemies don't play by any rules. No, they don't have a what rules? Exactly. There's no GAO, no IG, no Congress. No, okay, throw Congress. No, there's no budget that you got to wait on that comes in a continuing resolution. No, they don't have those obstacles. They do whatever the heck they want. So we got to be a little bit more clever, because we still want to abide by those rules, and we want to treat people with dignity and respect and do the right things. So if you're going to do the right things, then you got to team up, collaborate, cooperate, share information, and don't worry about it. I mean, we're competitive by nature. You'll beat them out next time. Don't worry about it. You brought a memory back to me. When I was at ICE, I had the honor of they stood up in DHS, they stood up the Joint Requirements Council. Okay. And I remember that, and they had representation from all of the HCAs. And I remember I was the rep from ICE on the Joint Requirements Council. I remember we were there wrestling with, how to build this thing. And I think it was someone at Coast Guard, one of the admirals that was on, was representing Coast Guard. And he stood up during the meeting and said, look, I understand why this is, why we should be doing that. Why we should be when we can buy together, we should buy together, and we should understand what everybody else is doing.
but please know our adversaries do not have a joint requirements council. Okay.
Exactly.
It was such a poignant, such a poignant message, and it resonated with everybody. Everybody had to stop and take it in for a minute. We got back to the business of building the JRC, but you had to process it for a moment, because that is indeed true. These structures that we put in place, we in the federal acquisition space, while important, please know they must be done efficiently and effectively, because our adversaries don't have anything similar to them.
Well, and look, it's the role of leadership to remember that. It's the role of leadership to stand up during the middle of a pandemic and say, we are going to raise the dollar thresholds, or we're going to do things a little bit differently, or we are going to go in that direction and not that one. That's what leadership is there to do, and then to give their people that top cover. Absolutely. And God knows that many times I had very pointed conversations with IGs and GAOs when they were coming around to critique what we did during the height of a pandemic. When they come to critique it 6 months later, I could do that. I could Monday morning quarterback too. And I don't want to knock them. They do an important job. They give us lessons learned. They really do. But you also have to be able to make your point and be the leader. Make those tough choices and then stand. By your people. Notice I didn't say behind your people, because there's a lot of people who stand behind you when something goes wrong. Agreed. You stand in front or next to them, and never behind them, right? Good because stuff. You got to enable them, you got to empower them, and people will follow a leader that they can trust, and they follow a leader who's willing to challenge. And if you haven't seen that in the war in Ukraine, I don't know how much more you see that. Look at seriously, he's like an example of what good leadership is. Yeah.
Agreed. So Soraya, we're about 10 minutes out. So I think we're gonna let's start our ramp towards a good close in about 10 minutes. I want to talk about one thing. I heard you talk about it earlier, and I want to hopefully to put a finer point on one topic. This is going to be my outgoing, so I'll give you an outgoing too. When you talked about the plan and the artifact, the document of writing an acquisition plan, and the planning that is different. Okay, you hit it right on the head. And here's a piece that I'd like to add to it about human nature. Okay, after you've been sequestered in a conference room or on Zoom for months writing something, the last thing you want to hear is an opinion after you've done all this writing, all this creation. While we say it's a draft, but it's not really a draft. It's like, this thing is pretty close. So the last thing, man. From a last thing that a team wants to see at that time is opinions and comments and thoughts. Mm-hmm. I say this because there's an important timing aspect to acquisition planning. Get everybody up there as soon as humanly. I want to beat this drum. Get everybody on the minivan as soon as possible and get them on the journey early, so that there are times when people actually want comments. Okay. When you have a blank sheet of paper, people will take comments out of the woodwork. It's like, please help us. Okay. Yep. But after you've done, you've put blood, sweat, tears, innovation, creativity, energy, all that into something, and it's like at 99%, it's in the high 90s. The last thing you want is an opinion. Okay, so I want to make sure I focus our community on both sides. There's a timing aspect to acquisition strategy design. Okay, so get us, not that we don't learn things as we go along, and we always want to save space for learning, but there is a perfect time for acquisition planning, design, and comments and thoughts and what ifs and all of the possibles. That's early. That's as early as possible.
So your point is very valid. That's why I said, notice I started with think about your team. I didn't start with think about your strategy or your requirement. I said, think about your team. Who needs to be at the table? By the way, one of the things that I used to do, because I've never forgotten what it is to be a contracting officer, and I probably never will. And one of the things that I used to do as senior procurement executive, I did it when I was the head of contracting, and in all of my leadership roles, is I'm at the table during that planning. Because if I have to approve that document, I should understand where you're going with your strategy. Yep. Because there is nothing more annoying than you've spent the next 3 months writing the damn document and then it lands on the highest person in the room.
Right.
Who goes, well, I don't agree with that.
Oh,
well,
this won't
you're
work.
like a day late and a dollar short, right?
Right.
So,
Right.
so I say they should be briefed
Yes.
before you even start writing that plan. Go in there with
Absolutely.
your outline and say, here's what we're thinking, here's what we're strategizing, especially if it requires their approval. If it doesn't require their approval, you're fine, right?
Yeah.
But get that person whose approval is required and say, we want to come in and give you a brief on where we're going with this thing.
Absolutely.
So
and ask for their opinion.
Exactly. Because we know what opinions are like. So my nugget, my pearl, you know I was going to say that. My pearl that I want to leave people with is that engagement with industry piece. Nothing in the federal acquisition regulation precludes you from speaking with industry. It does not say you can't talk to industry. Never says that. Anybody who tells you it says it in the FAR, just tell them to show you the part because I haven't found it yet.
Yeah.
It isn't there. What the FAR tells you is you can't give a vendor an unfair competitive advantage. In other words, you can't give one vendor information that you wouldn't give to other vendors. So if you're in doubt and you think you slipped up and said something, publish it. Publish it. That's why we've got our websites. That's why we've got sam.gov and the other tools that we have available to us in government. Just publish it. But the more you engage with industry, the earlier you engage with industry, I think you're going to have a much more effective solicitation. It's good. Your requirement will probably get better clarified because industry will ask you questions about your requirement and they'll share information about what they've seen at other federal agencies as well as within the industry themselves. And please remember when you're writing your eval criteria, and this is something that's always near and dear to my heart, don't exclude people unnecessarily. So for example, you're writing for leading edge technology, don't ask them if they have 20 years of doing this technology at federal agencies.
There's no correlation between the two. Yeah.
Exactly. So make sure you focus that criteria on what you really need and give an opportunity because our industrial base is getting smaller and we need to be inviting in more companies to do business with the federal government. We need to make it more efficient, more effective, more accepting. We need to be more accepting of our industry and commercial practices so that we can continue to expand our industrial base and bring in all those small businesses and underrepresented companies that are out there because they are out there and they deserve a piece of the pie here in the federal government and to help us. There are a lot of innovative companies out there doing great stuff.
Agreed.
So that's my nugget right there.
Awesome.
Well, that was like 2 or 3, right?
Well, this has been an awesome conversation. It's been an awesome conversation around acquisition strategy design. I think it's a critical piece. It's a part of every deal. At some point, you got to put a piece of paper, you got to put an idea, grab a whiteboard, something, and just think it out and just think it out. So with that, we're going to say thank you to our NCMA Space Coast sponsors team. We really appreciate the opportunity. And this has been truly amazing. So I just want to say thank you. And so I think we may be out.
That thank you. And I want to say thank you to everybody out there for the job that you do every single day. Keep doing great things.
All right. Be well.
Take care.
Bye.